friends and brothers. Welcome to Masonic Improvement. And tonight I am here with my co-host, my junior co-host, Justin Jones. I would like to welcome Right Worshipful Cody Stewart to the show. Thank you so much for coming on, Cody. And I'll let Justin finish explaining what we're doing tonight, and then we can take it from there.
Man, I've never been on this part of the introduction. I'm kind of taken aback here. So to this evening, we are
that
we're in the midst of a live stream, but we also are recording this. We have the one and only illustrious Right Worshipful Cody Stewart, and we are going to dive into parliamentary procedure and how it applies to our Masonic meetings and everything in between. So thanks for coming, Cody.
My pleasure. Thank y'all for having me on this. This can be looked at it can be seen as a pretty dry subject, but it's so important, so integral to everything that we do within a lodge meeting, that it's important that we have at least a basic understanding of what it is, why we need it, how to do it, and if we need a refresher on it, where to find the material to give us that brush up. So let's start at the end of that. Where do we find this? I don't think this has been in any of our previous monitors, but in the 2023 edition, that is included. In my monitor, it starts on page 86, and it's 5 or 6 pages long or so. A lot of the stuff that I'm going to be going over is taken directly from that monitor. Unfortunately, we, as a whole, our Grand Lodge suffers from cellophane disease. We'll get our monitor in, and we never take the cellophane off of it. Same thing with the law book. There you go, Dennis. That's it.
I'm just showing them all. This is the newest version, the hardbound copy. Let's do the Vanna White thing. The hardbound copy. Nice. I have one of those too.
It's for old eyes.
Yeah, it's up on a shelf somewhere.
And speaking of old eyes, you won't see me wearing reading glasses in public. For very long on here. They're uncomfortable. So why do we need it? What's it for? Well, essentially, it directs the business of our lodge meetings. It tells us how to do what we do when we're conducting lodge business. And I'm going to start off with one thing that I think we've all been guilty of, and this is a question. I think we've all been guilty of this, including myself. But when we stand to address some matter of business, we stand up and we get recognition from the master. What do we typically say first? This is the interactive part. This is part.
Do you want me to say what we hear typically, or what we say typically? Because
if it's two answers, I want both.
What I hear typically is the cultural view, which is worshipful master, right worshipful sirs, wardens, and brethren. Mm-hmm. Whereas I will typically just stand up and say worshipful master.
And you would be, out of approximately 57,000 Masons, you would be in the top 10 in that. Very few actually do that. When we're talking about matters of business, if we're making a motion, seconding a motion, or adding something to it, any sort of discussion to it, we should only address the worshipful master. It's actually inappropriate to address the entire lodge as a whole. And I'm not going to ask for a show of hands of who does that on a regular basis. But when we're addressing a matter of business, we should only address the master. Now, if we're talking about something that's not business related, if we're thanking the lodge for help with something, or whatever the case might be, if it's not an order of business, then we can address worshipful master, wardens, and brethren, and whatever else is appropriate, right? But when we're doing business, and I have to stress this, it's only appropriate to address the worshipful master in that.
Well, let me ask you this, and I know this is going to be kind of controversial because it's kind of a mixture of the two. But after a ritual, I've personally seen where different members would introduce themselves, and each one would say, "Worshipful Master, Right Worshipful Sir, Wardens and Brethren." And man, 30 minutes later, you're thinking, well, if all of you didn't say that, then we would have been done in 2 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
But thanks to everyone saying that, it took 30 minutes to get through this process. And I just have to hear your viewpoint. And I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings with that question. It's an honest question and something that I would like to be aware of when I'm speaking in those kind of terms. Not that I would be on a big degree team or anything, but if I were, I would definitely want to know what.
If the worshipful master has given us instructions to go around the room, starting on his right, introducing ourselves, he has given each individual the floor in turn, right? So to me, that would, and this is Cody's opinion, this isn't a matter of law or set forth in the monitor, but in Cody's opinion, it would be appropriate to stand, Cody Stewart, past master, Sulphur Springs Lodge, 221, and sit down. That's getting right to the meat of what he's asking us to do. If it's a simple introduction, even address him.
That's kind of what. That's kind of what I was thinking, because he just gave you an order or requested a response, not necessarily asking you to acknowledge him back when he's that was my mindset, and I'm glad you said that.
I agree 100%. So a lot of folks don't know that we actually have our own parliamentary procedure. A lot of us are used to, at least to some degree, are accustomed to Robert's Rules of Order, and a lot of organizations use that, and it works really well for them. But there are some things about Robert's that keeps it from being very usable in what we do. A lot of that is because of the power, the authority that the worshipful master holds in the lodge. So a lot of that has to be thrown out the window. I'll give you an example of that. There was a time several years ago that a past master, probably 7 or 8 times past master, had been a Mason for close to 40 years. Got tired of hearing the discussion, so he stood up, got recognition from the master, and said, "I call the question." And the master, being a relatively new Master Mason and not being aware that we don't adhere to Roberts, immediately ceased discussion and called for a vote, because that brother called the question. Neither one of them understood that calling the question or calling for an immediate vote is not in our authority as lodge members. Only the worshipful master can call for an immediate vote. That's his job and his alone. We can't set the length of discussion.
One of the things I took note of when you were saying that, the worshipful master has ultimate authority of the lodge during the meeting, the key words being during the meeting, because really it's the members' lodge, right? And the worshipful master is there to conduct the business and make it harmonious, efficient, blah, blah, blah. And I keep saying blah, blah, blah. I should say, et cetera, et cetera. But really it's the members' lodge. So having total authority doesn't necessarily roll into after lodge is closed in some instances, most instances.
He is always the master of that lodge. He's always the master. And something to keep in mind too when you're thinking about that is that unless your name is Brad Hoff, you're probably not going to be master multiple years in a row, right? Most of us take the east for 1 year, and then we're either on to another office. In my lodges, the next stop is usually as Tyler, and I don't know if that's to hopefully get him outside the door so that that immediate past master is not trying to run the show. Well, listen to how we did it my year. But since most Tylers come inside the lodge room anyway, I think I think that plan would be foiled. So you mentioned how much authority, how much power the worshipful master has, and you're absolutely right in that. He has a ton of authority. It's almost limitless. He answers only to the Grand Master, or he is responsible to the Grand Master and to the Grand Lodge of Texas. The lodge by itself does not have the authority to overturn any of the master's decisions or to remove him from office. Okay. Only the Grand Master and the Grand West have that authority. That's something important to keep in mind too. It's especially important if you are the sitting worshipful master. Now you have this awesome authority and responsibility to conduct the business of your lodge in peace and harmony. But know that power has to be kept in check, not make it become a matter of your ego, your pride, just because I said so, sort of thing. It's one of the worst answers you can ever give as worshipful master. When someone questions you or someone asks, well, why do we need to do this? Or why was that your decision? A master needs to have a good reason for everything that he does, not ruled by emotion, but by his heartfelt desire to serve the lodge the best he can. So we need to be very careful of who we elect as master of our lodge. A lot of us have progressive lines. That's not necessarily a bad thing by itself. But we have to be, if we have a progressive line, we have to be aware of who we're putting in that first office in that progression. And you can apply that to the Grand South as well, because that is a progressive line. Mm-hmm. So we need to be very cautious of who it is that we put in there.
So I had
that trail.
I had a question. I think we're probably backpedaling a little bit, but I had to fix some technical issues and I got sidelined. You said when you're handling business, if you're addressing a matter of business, you just address the worshipful master. Mm-hmm. What if it's business, but it's discussion? If you're discussing emotion, at that point, are you addressing everybody, or should you still technically just be addressing the master?
You should just be addressing the master. Everybody in the room is going to hear you, of course. There are times when you're bringing up a point in that discussion, and somebody may not be clear. Oh, let's flip that around. Somebody is discussing a particular. They're discussing emotion on the floor, and you have a question about what he said. You need some clarity on something that just didn't quite make sense in your mind. So you can ask the master's permission to address that brother individually. But aside from addressing with permission that individual brother, you should always address the master.
Interesting. Thank you.
All right. Again, most of what I'm talking about is going to be found in the monitor. There are a handful of things that that I'll talk about that are Cody's opinion only, and I will let you know when we get to a Cody's opinion thing. I don't want you to think that I speak for the Grand Lodge or anything like that as we're going through this. All right. So lodge business. Lodge business is the primary, a smooth flow of lodge business is why we need to use correct parliamentary procedure in the first place. That's what it's built for. And Grand Lodge law addresses that. Articles 168 to 176 are the ones that are the articles that specifically bring up certain items, some things that are set in stone. Article 170, for example, got this one here, governs the actions of members who speak in the lodge. And here's the, not only is this a matter of law, it's also one of the things, it's a pet peeve of mine. The member must rise, address the master, not the lodge, wait for recognition from the master, and then speak to the issue that's being considered. How many times have you been sitting in lodge and old Fred down the row from you just sticks up his hand and says, "Worshipful Master, I move that we paint the front wall of the lodge," or whatever it is. And somebody on the other side of the lodge room just shouts out, "Second," without ever standing up, without ever being recognized, any of that. To me, that's as rude as a little kid interrupting an adult conversation. It's just completely rude. And if your mama was anything like my mama, you got backhanded when that happens. I would not. I would hope I wouldn't see a worshipful master backhand a member for doing that, but ever what it takes, right? Maybe a gavel is more in line with that. So it's always appropriate, necessary, that when you're going to bring up any item of business, anytime you're going to speak to the master or speak through him to the lodge, you must rise, wait for the master to give you the floor, address him, and then make your point. Similarly, and the second is the one that I see this done incorrectly most of the time. You do the same thing. You stand, wait to be recognized. And once the master has recognized you, you can say, "I second the motion," or just simply second. That does a couple of things. Number one, it maintains order. And number two, maybe this is even more important, the secretary needs to be able to record who made the motion originally and who seconded that motion. If we just fly through those things, then he could either be making a guess or just miss that important piece of information altogether. So he needs to stand, be recognized, and then speak.
Well, I often see secretaries after a motion's made have to call that to attention and say, "Okay, who made the motion and who seconded?" Because they're playing catch up the entire time. But like you're saying, if we follow the process, if we slow it down, then that was unintentional. But if you slow
down every part of the process.
A perfect example of slowing down the process. It gives him time. First of all, you're following the formality that's expected of something Masonic. Otherwise, I mean, what you described, where you're just sitting there and raising your hand, and that's, you can do that in Lions Club. You do that in Rotary. We are not those things, and we need to stop conducting business like we are those things. But also, it gives the secretary time to be sure. Okay, brother such and such made the motion. Okay, brother such and such made the second, and then he doesn't have to stop the process later to get that information. He's got it. He's ready to go.
You're exactly right.
If I have to do that, I'm calling that person in. I do. I just say, since you didn't stand up like you're supposed to, I didn't see who it was. Even if I know who it was, I'm going to say that, because they have to understand that there's a reason we have these procedures in place, and it's for efficient lodge meetings. It's not for instant gratification on recognition of making a second.
Mm-hmm. Yep, you're absolutely right. And talking about the recognition part, the being seen or being heard, we all know those brothers, and you could probably pick one out from your lodge or more than one who, if a brother is standing up and he's offering some discussion on a piece of business before the lodge, he'll just sit there in his seat, interrupt that brother, ask his question or throw in his input while the guy's talking. And that's always inappropriate to do. Number one, it's just rude. We're supposed to be a society of gentlemen, and that sort of rudeness just doesn't fit here. So the only time that an interruption, a soft interruption maybe, is if another brother stands and needs to ask something from the middle of this guy's discussion, right? That brother can yield his time on the floor. He can yield the floor to that brother who is asking the question. That can be done. But aside from that, then it's wrong. You'll hear me say the word inappropriate a lot. I say it at our forums a lot. Mm-hmm. There are lots of things that we do that are just plain inappropriate. And it's things that we can get out of the habit of doing. Can and should.
I typically, even as secretary, I will stand up. Always. I'll stand up and wait until the worshipful master recognizes me, and then I'll speak. But even if I have something to say after someone else, you can kind of tell when they're winding up their point, right? So I typically wait until that moment where I say, okay, the point is made, they're winding down. Then I stand up just so that they know that, so the worshipful master knows that I'm interested in saying something as well in regards to the same topic. I don't do it to try to interrupt. I just do it as in waiting my turn. But I also will wait until that brother sits down before I speak, because having that back and forth between this seat and this seat and this seat in the lodge is just terrible. That's just as bad as standing up or not standing up and giving the second. Having this, this great debate going back and forth is just ridiculous.
It is, and that's part of the master's responsibility to nip that in the bud right now. That's why he has a gavel. I've seen a couple of masters in the 30 whatever years been in Masonry, a couple of masters who use the gavel a little too much. It's pretty rare, thankfully. But the flip side to that is he has that gavel for a reason. And that's the time when he needs to use it. If we have some discussion that starts getting personal, and personal remarks or sharing personal opinions, personal being directed at someone, not that this is my opinion, right? So if we start getting personal in any of our remarks, then the master needs to, he must use that gavel. One of his purposes, one of the reasons he's there is for the business meeting side of it, is to keep us on track and let peace and harmony prevail. So if a brother gets out of line and for whatever reason has to be, I hate to use the word reprimanded, but it fits. If a brother has to be reprimanded twice, then the master can remove him. He may remove him from the lodge room. He can ask him to leave. So personalities, and this is another way to get myself in hot water. Personality conflicts have no place within the walls of our lodge rooms ever. If I don't like you, then that absolutely cannot, it can never, or if I have something against you, whatever the case is, that can never be shown. Above all, we're brothers. We need to act like it, even if we have a personality conflict or whatever. That cannot come out during a meeting. Wildly inappropriate. There's that word.
You mentioned if a brother needs to be reprimanded more than twice.
Mm-hmm.
To clarify, so we're not talking about the second time he needs to be reprimanded. We're talking about if he's already been reprimanded twice, the third time, at that point, the worship master may, so he does the same thing a third time, and the worship master may at that point, ask him to leave. Is that what you're saying?
At the second time, he can.
Oh, at the second time. Okay.
You get one chance to make the mistake. The second mistake, you got to go. Or the master can say, he may say, you got to go. He can order him to leave the lodge room. That I've never seen happen. I've seen a time or two when it probably should have happened, but I've never seen a master use that part of his authority. Let's see, what was next? So here's an interesting note, and I'm going to read this directly from the monitor. The worshipful master must never permit any brother to disrupt the peace and harmony of the lodge. That's, again, one of the master's biggest responsibilities, to make sure that everything that we're doing is, all of our business is conducted in peace and harmony. Let's see. There's one other thing that I want to jump on right now. There are certain types of motions that are never allowed, shouldn't be allowed, and a master should always know what types of motions are appropriate and when. When can we do this? So I'm going to give you a few of them straight out of the monitor again. When a resolution or proposition is ready for consideration, only the following motions are acceptable: to postpone temporarily, postpone definitely, refer to a committee, amend, or adopt. And that 5-type list is actually the order of rank. So that first one, to postpone indefinitely, or old eyes, postpone temporarily, that is the top ranking motion, and the motion to adopt is actually the last ranking. So if we have things on the floor, that's the order that we can move. The motion to postpone temporarily is also known as the motion to table something. That same master did that. I'm not going to harp on this guy. We'll leave him alone. But the master is not obligated to entertain that motion. In fact, the worshipful master has a lot of authority with this as well. He is not obligated to accept any motions. Again, when we stand, get the floor, we get recognition from the master, we address him. He is the one who gets to answer that. He can choose at that point to either accept or decline acceptance of any motion that he sees fit. It's an awesome power, and one that I could see certain types of personalities abusing. Thankfully, it's one that I've never seen to be done in a lot of legislative bodies, especially those that follow Robert's rules. It's known as the motion to table, and it's often used to kill whatever item of business is being brought before the lodge or before that body. He's definitely not obligated to accept that one. Let's see.
Can I ask you a hypothetical question?
Sure.
Hypothetical as in I've actually seen it, but I'm not going to name any.
You can always say in a lot visited one time.
In a lodge I visited one time. Yes, we'll go with that. There was a motion for a bylaws change, and it followed the process, and it was voted on and passed. And then the following meeting, a brother who had not been at any of the meetings prior made the motion to postpone. How I word this? To basically postpone the results of the vote until like 9 months down the road. It was basically it was a dues change, and 9 months down the road would have been a different worshipful master and things like that.
A redaction. He tried to redact.
That term wasn't. Yeah, and it happened. The worshipful master. He meant well. He didn't realize he didn't have to entertain the. I don't think a lot of worshipful masters realize that that he didn't have to entertain the vote. And so it was voted on, and the same brothers that voted to pass it a month before suddenly were voting to postpone it. So my question is, is that improper, or is that what are your thoughts on that?
To postpone the results, giving the results of a vote. Am I understanding that right?
Yeah, that wasn't the term used, but it was basically let's not raise the dues until 9 months, and we'll revisit it, even though they'd already voted to do it.
If they voted to do it, they can. If the motion to adopt the dues change has already happened, my thinking on this, and I could be wrong. My way of thinking on this is that it could be brought up for reconsideration, which can be done either at that meeting or the subsequent meeting.
And that may have been the term used.
I'm sorry?
That may have been the term used for reconsideration.
There are some rules surrounding that process as well. But if that's what they wanted to do, then they could reconsider it and then defeat it. Come back 9 months later, whenever they wanted to actually put this into place, and bring it up again and do it, at whatever point in time they wanted to. Again, that may not be the correct way to do it, and there's probably a better way, but that's one way.
Yeah, I'd never seen it before, so I was curious what your thoughts. And it's been a while, but the brother who hadn't been there in a while, he didn't hear any of the discussion, and he heard that we had $3,000 or so in the bank account, or they did. Not that I was part of that lodge. They had $3,000 in the bank account. So the question was, why are we raising dues when we have so much money? So, sorry.
I'd like to have 3,000 in the bank right now.
Yeah. Anyway, I apologize if I digress too much. I was curious though.
Good, you're good. So let's talk about some motions, some types of motions that are not acceptable. They should never be entertained in lodge, and that's motions to adjourn, go to recess, which in ours would be only if you're in a master's lodge, calling from labor to refreshment, calling the question, to vote immediately, and I talked about that one a few minutes ago, to limit a debate to either a certain number of speakers or a certain time frame, and then to postpone indefinitely, which, as I mentioned earlier, is basically a tool that some legislative bodies like Congress would use to effectively kill a motion. So those 5 types: adjourn, recess, vote immediately, or call the question, limit debate, and postpone indefinitely, are not proper motions. They should never be done.
I would like to add one more, and not to. It's because I found it out. A brother called me a while back, not too long ago, actually, a couple of weeks ago, and said that he was told that he made an incorrect motion, that he could not make a motion, a negative motion. And I read it and I thought, oh, that's right. You can't make a negative motion. You can't make a motion that would leave confusion in if it was if a yes was a no and a no was a yes, or what have you. You want to explain that a little bit? I know
Yeah.
you know it.
Yeah. Any motion needs to be made in the positive or in the affirmative. One example of setting one up in the negative. I'm not great at thinking on my feet about this sort of thing, but if my lodge has been participating in our local fall festival for the last 20 years, that's an annual event for us. And we pretty well set things in stone that's what we're going to do. And then a brother stands up and gets recognized and tells the master, I move that we not participate in the fall festival this year. That's an example of framing a motion in the negative. To say, I move that we do not do this.
Yeah, because if you say yes, it means no, and
Right.
that's what you're trying not to.
So how would you word that then?
I move that we how would you do that?
Would it be like, I move we discontinue?
What
We set this one out, something along those lines where it's clear that voting yes means that yes, we're going to take that action of sitting this one out, or whatever that action needs to be.
Well, what they would have to do is say somebody would have to make a motion to, I guess in that scenario, you would be assuming that a motion had already been voted on. So then you would need to do a reconsider. Because
Yeah.
if it wasn't brought up at all, then somebody else would have to make a motion to do the thing, and then you would have to vote no to squash it. And you could always say that in the discussion that, we ought to squash this thing this year. And so then when the vote comes up, everybody just votes no.
And well, we can bring that a little bit closer to home too. If it's your lodge's way of doing things to have a motion to pay bills every month, and some lodges do that. Well, make that motion and pay their bills, I guess. You stand and say, I move that we not pay our bills this month. We don't have enough money. That's framing it in the negative. A positive way to put that, I move that we wait until next month to pay our bills.
Yes. There you go. And that would be it. I make a motion that we wait until next year to do the fall festival or whatever.
Gotcha.
And that's a good way of putting it.
You brought up something that is interesting to me, Cody, because I've heard it both ways. And I've never really. So when a treasurer gives the report, do you need to, is it proper to make a motion to pay the bills or not? Or is it necessary?
I'm going to preface this by saying I don't have a definitive answer for you. I don't know that there's. I believe you can.
We did a blanket. I'll help out with what we did at the beginning of the year. We did a blanket motion that all regular bills would be paid without further motion, and that way throughout the year, I just pay all the bills that need to be paid. Now, if there's something special that we wouldn't normally we're talking light bill, lawn maintenance, all that kind of stuff. Something special, if we need an air conditioner, that goes to the lodge. But if it's regular, month to month bills, then they just get paid.
How long would a motion like that stand for? Like a year, like a Masonic year?
We did it for the year, yeah. We said for the year.
I
And
was
then, but there's a lot of lodges that want to pay it monthly, but all the lodges that I belong to have always done it. I make a motion, we pay the regular bills for the year.
I was just curious because, first of all, like I said, I heard it both ways, but for some lodges, depending on when they meet, the bills have already been paid. They had to pay them. And so it's like, we're making a motion to pay the bill. Well, thank God we passed it because I sent the check in 2 weeks ago. Right. So it's kind of like, I was, since you brought it up, I was curious about the proper process for that. But I do like Dennis's idea because I feel like that's part of the treasurer's duties. Secretary and treasurers have specific duties that I think that's part of them having a job. Why would you have to vote on that?
Yep. And you're exactly right. That was pretty close to what I was trying to pull. But your exact answer, Dennis, that was perfect. That was better than what I was going to say.
Perfect.
See that, Justin? See that, Justin? Perfect.
Wow.
Improper. You're improper.
Improper. Inappropriate.
Inappropriate. It's
Bad
easy.
form, sir.
So what,
Okay.
what all this boils down to, every bit of it, is that a worshipful master needs to be familiar enough with our parliamentary procedure, with what's specific to us as Texas Masons, and with the laws governing our procedures, to be able to run an effective, smooth operation with his lodge. It's that simple. But even if he can memorize this entire section on parliamentary procedure and can memorize all of the stuff that's in the law book about it and those articles that I gave you, there's absolutely no substitute for a master to have good common sense in how to do things, and having some empathy. He knows the personalities, should know the personalities of his lodge, and know what it takes to keep from unnecessarily stepping on his members' toes when it comes to running the lodge, taking care of the business.
I was thinking about what you said at one point, that about having somebody escorted from the lodge, and I was only presented with that one time. And I was presented with that one time. A lot of masters never are presented with that, but I was presented with that situation one time where I should or I could have done that, but because I knew the members of the lodge, and I knew that this brother never gets up and pitches a gripe like this, I knew it was short-lived. And he said his piece, was angry, and then walked out the door. And I didn't have to do anything. He took care of it himself. And he didn't come back. And he he still hadn't come back. It went there were even charges filed on him the next year and all kinds of stuff. I didn't file charges. I wasn't that upset about it. And frankly, I think the person he was talking about wasn't very offended either. I think it was more the brothers that were offended that he did it in lodge. But it was one thing that the guy was passionate about, was upset, didn't feel like a brother was being a brother, stated it in lodge, and walked out. And he said, I can't sit in lodge with this person, and this is why, and then walked out. And it was done. As far as I was concerned, it was squashed at that point. It was done. He walked out on his own. He wasn't coming back. So, that's his deal. But that was the only point that I could have ever gavelled somebody down in. I didn't. I'm weak. Hopefully I'm strong.
You smell strong. I believe
all the way from there.
Wow.
Zoom's come a long way, man.
I know. It's a scratch and sniff, Justin.
I believe that everything we talked about this evening And I'm sure, I don't know if Cody has more, but I just want to say that
Now that we've
the comment was made about the cellophane syndrome, or what the terminology was, where they'll get the book, but they'll never open it. And ideally, all Masons would do that. They would familiarize themselves with the monitor and read through that in the law book. However, I think this is why it's beneficial to have your junior warden, for example, read excerpts from the law book every meeting. I think it's likewise beneficial to make it a point to educate brothers on what the monitor says about parliamentary procedure. It didn't have to be like a huge lengthy thing, but you could share just a few key points every meeting, because otherwise, if you had a very informed worship master that read through the monitor, that knew the parliamentary procedure, and he just assumed his position as worship master after installation and just started like hammering parliamentary procedure on everybody, you're gonna, like, these people are just gonna get pissed off because they have no clue, like, where's all this coming from? Why is he doing this? But if you spend time and intentionally educate people, this is how we should do this. Or even as worship master, just make it a point, hey, I'm not going to recognize anybody who does not stand up and be recognized by me before they make a motion or second it. I'm not going to acknowledge it even happened. And you start just setting these expectations, sharing the education, you can get to where you need to be. But like was said, so many people aren't learning this on their own. We have to take it upon ourselves to really be sure that people are aware of this and learning about these things.
That's good. That's good. The part of the installation ceremony for the master, it goes along with what you were saying. You will cause it to be read in your lodge.
Yes,
talking about the law book, and I can't speak for your lodges. What I've seen in mine and some others that I've visited in the area. A lodge I visited one time, one of those, is that the junior warden will often look for the shortest, whatever passage he can read or whatever article he can read, and that's what's going to be it. There should be some intention behind choosing an article. The master should set the expectation with him that he does do that. He does his research intentionally, and if he knows about the business that we're going to be doing on a particular night, or about some subject that is going to come up soon, start to educate himself on what the law says, and then when the master calls on him to do the law reading, he stands and reads not just the shortest thing he can find, but what's appropriate for the business we have at hand. An example would be on balloting. What does the law say about balloting? What's required? How many black cubes does it take to disqualify somebody? For how long? What's the manner of balloting? It's the master's responsibility as well, but it doesn't have to be just one article. I certainly wouldn't advocate for setting aside 30 minutes or so for the junior warden to read a whole bunch of stuff. We'd all start nodding off, right? But part of that, it's not just to perform this function, it's to educate us. So if he needs to take a few minutes to read multiple articles that pertain to something that's relevant to what we're doing, then he should.
Therein lies the value of having an agenda ahead of time that is shared with the leadership.
Yep. Oh, and here's another point that I didn't bring up in the lodge procedures part, that a master is not required to accept any motion. We talked about that for a minute. It's always appropriate. It's always best if the motion is given in writing to the secretary and to the principal officers of the lodge, so that they can ahead of time, and not right before the meeting starts, but give it to them, let them digest it, let the master assign a committee for it, even before the motion's brought before the lodge. That's a good way to handle something, especially if it's more than just let's pay our bills. If we're going to go into something that a project of some kind that's going to require some money, or it's going to require manpower, let's talk about what this is going to take. Let a committee of informed brothers sit down and look at this process, and then bring the motion up at the right time. And of course, keeping the guy who has presented that motion or has presented that paper to the officers, keeping him informed every step of the way, but give it to him ahead of time.
That way, if someone wants to, sorry, go ahead, Dennis. My bad.
We constitute a procedure that, the culture of whoever, all things are brought to the lodge by committee. So if there's anything that needs to be done, it's had a committee assigned to it, and then the committee chairman makes the motion, and then the second usually comes from the vice chair, unless the vice chair is not there for whatever reason, and then somebody else will stand up. But typically, it's going to be that committee chairman that makes the motion to the lodge, and because they've done the research and everything. Another thing I wanted to say a minute ago, hats off to our junior warden at OSO this year, Oscar Medina. He's doing a great job. And when he reads the law, the article, he gives the article, and then he reads it, and then he gives what he believes it to be. And it kicks off a discussion within our lodge. If it's a little bit controversial, and sometimes it is, then it kicks off a discussion in lodge, and we get to have a good discussion on the matter, and then we come to a finalized, this is kind of the consensus of how we believe this is. And usually it's the proper one. I'm not going to say that we're trying to interpret law incorrectly or anything, but it ends up being real nice because he has thought it out, just like you said. It's purposeful. It has meaning behind it, and he's already researched it and he's researched every law that pertains to that law to make sure that he's understanding exactly. His understanding is exactly what it was intended to be, as well as all the Grand Master's decisions and all that kind of stuff. And so, which is a good thing. And now, just real quick, one of the things that I didn't know how to do much as a secretary when I came in, but there were two things I knew what to do. I got one of these for every officer, and I got the law books with the updated Grand Master's decisions for 2024 for every station, for every officer. So do that for your lodge. Make sure that your lodge is prepared. And that's the officers and the secretary's desk, by the way, just to make sure that everybody has what we need to conduct business. And
Dennis, if I can make one little side note on the first part that you talked about, with having everything in line with that committee report, we should never get in a hurry. We should almost never get in a hurry to pass any motion. Okay, especially if it deals with a significant amount of money, manpower, time, any of those things. Harken back to the first words I ever heard Justin Jones say: slow down the process. Do this right. Take the time to do it right. Listen, Justin, I don't know how many years ago that was when I heard you say that. At that point in time, I had never met you, but you were standing a few feet away from me, and I heard you make that point to another brother, Masonicon in Fort Worth.
I believe it was Masonicon. I think that's actually the first time we met, too.
It is.
Justin Zacorn.
Slow down the process. It applies to more than just one.
Took you a minute. It does. It applies to a lot. It really does.
Well, Freemasonry has been around for a very, very long time. And just like a tortoise, right? Tortoises live for hundreds of years, but they never get in a hurry. But they get where they're going. And we kind of got to be more like a tortoise, I think. Like we have to understand we have a long life ahead of us. If we do things right, there's no point in being in a hurry.
Well, that's all I have, gentlemen, unless y'all have other questions or anything.
I don't have any questions. I've asked everything that's come to mind. Does any of the listeners here in the Zoom, do y'all have anything you want to ask?
I wish I did, but y'all covered all the stuff that I was honestly curious about. And I just want to say thank you again, Right Worshipful, that you were able to and willing to come on and discuss this with us, because I know this is a topic I brought up because I wasn't familiar with the parliamentary procedures, and frankly, I had been running more or less under Roberts, during my time in the East. Fortunately, it didn't work out poorly for me.
Any process is better than no process.
Amen.
There's got to be a starting point, right?
Yeah.
So I'm always happy to talk. Always. I may not know a dang thing about what I'm talking about, but
Well, you sell it like you do every time.
thank you.
Brad,
And again,
Yeah. Is there a proper way of wording it if you did not make your motion beforehand to the secretary and the officers, and you were in lodge and there has to be a motion made during the meeting, is there a proper way to word it? Or preferred way to word it rather than say, I make a motion to, or do you say I move to, or does it matter?
It probably doesn't matter for the end result, but this is one of those times when form matters to me, at least. The appropriate way to say that would be, I move that we, or I move for the lodge to, rather than say I make a motion. I make a motion is like standing up and hula hooping or something like that. We don't want to make those kinds of motions. So yeah, you hit the nail on the head with the second way you said that. I moved that.
That's what I thought. Thank you.
You betcha.
question. Sorry, Dennis, what were you going to say a second ago?
no, I don't know.
Oh, okay. Well, let's go into closing thoughts then. Brad, Byron, either one of you have anything else you want to add real quick?
I don't have anything else to add at this time. Nothing here other than thank you again, Right Worshipful.
It's my pleasure. And guys, thank y'all for having me. This was fun. I always enjoy getting to dig every time I do some research on anything. I learn a lot. So thank you again for giving me this chance.
Absolutely, man. Brad, you got anything?
I'm all good.
All right. Well, I just want to say, first of all, like I always say, I'm always appreciative of each of you for your continued support, continue to come in here and have conversations with us. I never say this because I don't want anyone to feel like that there's like any kind of, like I appreciate anybody more than the other, or there's any kind of hierarchy or anything like this, but I'm always blown away. I don't know how we did it, but we managed to get Cody Stewart actively participating in the inner circle, and that's just it says a lot about the character that Cody has, because he is truly passionate about the fraternity. He's truly passionate about making about improving and helping it to go in the right direction. And I appreciate your continued support, Cody. It means a lot. Like I said, all of you mean a lot and this is not to any way say I appreciate anyone more than the other or anything like that. But having Cody on, that's a pretty big deal. And I genuinely appreciate. I mean, this is not the first time you jumped on and given us insight. Every time you hop on, I know if there's any ambiguity or anything like that, Cody Stewart can hop on. He'll pop in and be like, "Well, actually," and he'll clarify it. And I cannot stress how invaluable that is, especially for a podcast geared towards improvement. It really helps your improvement when you know what's actually in good form and what isn't. And so I appreciate you coming on and giving this talk with us this evening. And love you, man. I love all of you. You're all great, but I really appreciate everything y'all do. Masonic Improvement started with one random dude. He's still a pretty random dude, and then grew to Dennis and I, and now it's all of us. It's all of us, and it wouldn't have grown without each and every one of you and your contributions and your support. So I appreciate each of you. All right, D.
You got anything, Cody?
Oh.
Okay. So it's my turn. You just had to put nice in there, so I can't give you a hard time.
D nice.
You were the wolf pack of one, and then we became two.
It's more like an angry badger.
Oh my gosh, the honey badger.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed this talk, and the reason why, and crazy thing, Dennis actually does like parliamentary procedure. I do like good form. I do like those things. I challenge things a lot, but I always try to do that within due bounds, and I do that just to keep everybody thinking outside the box, because sometimes we don't always if we're always thinking in one direction, sometimes we miss the good stuff. So I like for people to think outside the box, and I like to be challenged as well. This talk was another great talk. It's a great example of who we are as men and Masons, that we actually have our own parliamentary procedure, that we thought it important enough to uphold the traditions of our fraternity by creating our own parliamentary procedures and not adopting something like Robert's rules. So whereas motions can be squashed and things can get gridlocked and things like that, like what happens in Senate and in Congress. We typically don't have that in Freemasonry because of our ability to differentiate ourselves on a higher level. That being said, thank y'all so much. And we haven't mentioned it in a while, but we are going to have an inner circle dinner at Grand Lodge this year, and that will be on the Thursday night, and it will be at 6 p.m. and last until we close the place down at 10 p.m. We do that every year, and so that all of our friends and brothers know out there, the inner circle are paid subscribers, the ones that actually support the broadcast, because it does cost us a little bit of money to do this every year, to have the high definition and to have the unlimited screen time and whatnot. It costs us a little bit of money. It costs for our equipment and bandwidth and whatnot. So, thank you. Y'all help us do this. Without y'all, it would be a lot harder for us to keep this going. And I'm grateful for that. So it's my privilege to be able to offer an experience that's a little bit better than just chili dogs at Wiener Schnitzel. So hopefully we get to have a good time, good discussion, and good libations on the Thursday night if you partake. Not everybody partakes, and that's okay. Other than that, like Justin said, I'm grateful for all y'all. I'm grateful to the listeners. I'm and the viewers. I'm just grateful for this experience that I get to have in my masonry. So we love you, brothers. Thank you, and keep it between the points.